All right, guys, welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are going to preview and prediction for the Pinstripe Bowl between Boston College and Nebraska. Cornhuskers are 4-point favorites. 46 snaps the total, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Bronx, New York, Yankee Stadium is the site of this one. Looking at the Boston College offense, this group's been pretty good, scoring 28 points in 3 straight games. So switching over to Grayson James, they did score 27 points in 5 straight games. You want to count that, but we'll just go ahead and kind of shrink it up to just James's numbers because this has been a bit of a different offense with what he possesses as a passer. 901 yards, 6 touchdowns through the air, 3 rushing over that span. Castellanos had been a good quarterback. His efficiency, he didn't turn the ball over too much, but he just wasn't that great as a, pocket passer. Grayson James on the other hand, done pretty well. Lewis Bond, the top pass catcher, 590 and 3 TDs on top of 60 receptions. Kamari Morales has been a good tight end with 6 touchdowns as well. Big play receiver Reed Harris is averaging 30 yards per catch. So I got some guys here that are going to get involved for this passing attack. More importantly, though, they have a 3-headed monster at running back. They're really a 4-headed monster if Turbo Richard's healthy. Jordan McDonald has 362. Trishawn Ward's been an efficient runner. And then Kyle Robichaud has been the best one with 725 and 10 touchdowns. 176 yards per game running the ball for BC. This is a good rushing attack. They've played some solid defenses and done very well against them. This is going to be a great one they're facing here, though. Nebraska, they are phenomenal. 105 yards allowed per game. They're missing a few guys on defense, but Ty Robinson and Nash Hutchmacher on the interior D-line are going to be playing in this game. MJ Sherman has been a great run defender. Cameron Lenhart is going to play more in this one. So there are down a few guys. Nick Jamari Butler is one of them. They also have a linebacker in Micaiah Gabor. He'll be out for this contest, and then Stephon Thompson won't be playing either. But I still feel confident in their ability to get the job done on the ground in terms of Nebraska stopping the run, especially with right tackle Ozzie Trapilo out for this game due to an opt-out. What do you think ultimately has the edge? Because he'll come down to who can, on this side of the ball, do better in the trenches.
I really like what this offense can do for BC since they've swapped over to Grayson James. 64% comp rate, 900 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's been solid. Lewis Bond's been good for this team, 590 and 3 scores for him. Reed Harris, 461 yards and 4 scores for him, while Kamari Morales has been solid as well, 211 and 6 scores. Trishawn Ward is a dual threat. He's used out of the backfield as a receiver, 268, 17.9, and 4 scores for him, while he has 406, 5.3, and 2 scores on the ground. Robichaud's been really solid as well, 725, 4.4, and 10 scores, while Jordan McDonald and Turbo Richard pitch in as well. This is an effective unit. They're really solid on the ground, about 190 yards per game through the air and 176 per game on the ground. So they produce on both sides there. I think this is a really good offense. I like the direction Bill O'Brien is building a solid offense here. Ty Robinson's a really good player on defense for Nebraska. 33 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks for him. Nash Hutchmacher has been solid as well. 24 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. A lot of solid players in the secondary for this team. Isaac Gifford, Malcolm Hartzog, and Deshaun Singleton are all really solid players. Hartzog, 43 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 4 pass breakups. Really good numbers there. I think he's a really big physical player, and Gifford leads the team in tackles with 69 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a pass breakup. I like what this defense can do for Nebraska. This is a physical unit that's played some good football this year at times, but they've been weak against the pass, right? 200 yards per game given up is certainly concerning. They're really good against the run, 105 yards per game given up on the ground. So look for them to try and dominate in the trenches and force Boston College to throw the ball. I'm confident, though, that James could still throw the ball and have success through the air and lead this team potentially to victory.
There's a good secondary. They've had some issues at times. Nothing too major. I think they did quite well considering the opposition they faced. Sierra Wright, Marcus Buford, Malcolm Hartzog, some of the guys you alluded to have been really good this year. Hartzog is a phenomenal player in the slot. One of their top playmakers, Isaac Gifford, and then, of course, Deshaun Singleton at safety. So this is a good secondary on top of that D-line that really hasn't been phased other than the Indiana game where they got annihilated on the ground. That's about it. And so maybe that's a concern for you. Maybe that same thing will happen here. And then linebacker is obviously missing some depth. But John Bullock, one of their senior leaders, he is playing in this game. 9 tackles for loss and a pick 6 on the year. So still some good stuff there. I think Nebraska ultimately probably has an edge. 87th allowed in sacks for the O-line. Castellanos being gone, I think, would help in terms of not allowing as many negative plays. But sometimes this BC offense can get caught in a bit of a log jam, not able to produce. But the last month of this season, they did a pretty good job staying consistent with balance. So this will be an interesting challenge here against this great Nebraska defense. Moving to the other side of the ball, Nebraska's offense on the BC defense for Nebraska. This is a group that will be down their top pass catcher in Isaiah Neor. He's second on the team, but he is one of their top options. Dante Dowdell, their top rusher, and what's a deep backfield, is back in the portal for like the third time in 3 years, so great job to you. And then Dylan Raiola, the freshman quarterback, had some flashes of being a tough playmaker. Approaching 2,600 yards, has completed almost 67%, 12 touchdowns, does have 10 interceptions, and he's himself has been facing tough defenses, Nick. Over the last month and a half, they've been facing nothing but tough defenses, and he's managed it quite well. Wasn't great against Indiana, had some issues against Ohio State. The teams in LA held them to 20 points exactly in that one. So he's been battle-tested, right? And he does have Jamal Banks. Ja'Cory Barney's been an impressive freshman this year. Thomas Fidoni's been a nice pass catcher as well. And Jalen Lloyd, I think he can still be a big-time playmaker whenever they get him involved against a Boston College defense, giving up 24 points per game and 360 yards per contest. They're not all that sound against the run or the pass, that is, themselves. 250 yards almost they give up per game. They have snagged 16 interceptions, so they've been great at making plays. Carter Davis, Corey Johnson, Max Tucker, some of the standouts in the secondary. So it's been a defense that's had their issues, but they've been battle-tested, and they've stepped up when they've needed to. And the run defense for BC has been flat-out elite the last 2 games, held UNC to 36, 23 for Pitt, 39 for Syracuse. I mean, these are pretty solid rushing attacks, Nick, and they've held them in check. 104 yards for SMU. Before that, they gave up 368 to Virginia Tech. Since then, though, they have been phenomenal in the trenches. And I know it's still a deep backfield for Nebraska. Ramir Johnson and Emmett Johnson as well are going to be getting be toting the rock. Does Boston College all of a sudden have an advantage here?
I think Boston College potentially has an advantage, but I do think this is an offense for Nebraska that's, has some growing pains, but they're developing. Obviously, Raiola is an incredibly talented quarterback, a 5-star coming out of high school. There were going to be some growing pains. He had sky-high expectations entering his first career season at Nebraska, and rightfully so. He's a talented prospect. But, I think he lived up to some of those expectations, also disappointed some of those comparison-wise. Still an incredibly talented quarterback who will continue to develop as a passer. 60% comp rate, 2,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 10 picks. Obviously, turnovers are a bit of a concern, but again, true freshman, so I'm not as concerned about that. Long-term, a guy that I think was still the star of the future for the Cornhuskers. Banks has been really solid as a receiver, 508 for him, 12.7, 3 scores. But Barney is a great freshman for this team. He leads the team in catches with 52 total catches, 431 yards for him. No touchdowns. Hopefully, he gets in the end zone at some point. And then Thomas Fidone has been solid as well, 323 and 10.4. So some good numbers there. Down their top back in Dante Dodwell, but I think Emmett Johnson's still a really good back, while Raheem Johnson's also a solid back for them. And then Barney Jr. is also really solid and getting involved as a running back. A couple trick plays for him. He has 3 touchdowns on the ground and 13 yards per attempt on some trick play catches. So certainly something to keep your eye on when you look at this game. As for Boston College, they're a very good defense down their top player, who is most likely not going to play in this game, the All-American and Donovan Ezerique, who's been really solid for this team. But they are still a good unit overall and good against the run and solid against the pass as well. I think this is a unit that's getting better as time goes on. Certainly want to work on what they can do against the pass, but 113 yards per game given up on the ground is not a bad number at all. They have some solid pieces on the defensive line in Cam Horsley, who's a good veteran, 42 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss for him. He's a big physical player. While Contavious Hutchinson as well has been solid, 30 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, a pick, and 2 fumble recoveries. I like what this Boston College defense has been able to do at points this season. 24 points per game is a good number. 21st ranked run defense, a solid unit, and they also get a couple interceptions here and there with 16 total on the back end, which I'll highlight in a second here. So overall, I do like this BC defense in this matchup.
Yeah, you alluded to Cam Horsley's been great against the run this year. Anito Akpala, George Rooks, Quintavious Hutchins, these guys are all going to have big shoes to fill. As Defensive Player of the Year, Donovan Ezerique, Nick, this guy's a complete game wrecker against the run and as a pass rusher. He's opting out, going to go very high in the draft, 20.5 TFL, 16.5 sacks. I mean, these are elite numbers we're talking. He's got more than half the team's sacks, Nick. So the pass rush is going to take a significant dive down. I think the run defense might also take a tick down, because that's one less elite playmaker you got to block, and sometimes one guy can really be the difference maker. You've seen it with Aaron Donald in the NFL for a long time, where he's not on the field, and things are all of a sudden much easier. So, I think that's certainly a big concern that's probably not going to be talked about enough. One defensive end here for Boston College. This guy is as good as they come, and, it's a bit of a mid-level offensive line for Nebraska, but this is a lot less stress on their plate, and I think it might play into their favor.
Yeah, Noah Zaraku is a massive loss. You highlighted his stats there. Jaw-dropping numbers, 16.5 sacks. You really don't see that in college these days. Just a ridiculous number. Earned his All-American stripes for a reason. I mentioned him briefly in the intro, 80 total tackles for him. I'm expecting him to be, a first-round draft pick this year, maybe in the mid-20s range. This is a guy that's so talented. It's a shame he's not playing this game, so I wanted to get one more look at him. He is phenomenal, really exciting player, had a great season. Can the defensive line for Boston College adjust, though? I think they can. I think some of the guys I highlighted, some of the guys you highlighted, Horsley and Hutchins are two players that could really step up. Owen Stoudemire as well as another really key piece. George Rooks is solid as well. I like that matchup because I think this Nebraska's offensive line has not been phenomenal this year. They've not protected Raiola as much as I thought they would. They've been a bit of a weaker unit. I still think BC, even down their best player on the defensive side of the ball, still has a good opportunity here. This is still a pretty good team. They can still get some sacks. I know he has more than half the team's sacks, but I still think they can get a couple sacks here and there. And overall, I like what this defense can do. This is a good defensive line against the run.
I move to the final thoughts and the prediction for the Pinstripe Bowl. This is an interesting game. I certainly think that it's a complete toss-up, 4-point line in favor of the Cornhuskers, but I would consider it a pick-em, honestly, because this one can go either way. Both teams are down some notable players. I think the ones for Boston College are much more important. Star right tackle, and then, of course, the defensive player of the year that we just alluded to. I'm going to stick with Nebraska in this one. I know their defense had a blemish against Indiana. That was the only one they had, though. Everywhere else, they've been pretty darn good this season. Held Ohio State to under 300 yards. They couldn't get on the field at all. That was a game they played very well in after getting thumped by IU. So obviously, it's not as relevant considering how the rest of the year played out. This is an offense, though, that has certainly had its issues. And I think Raiola, and the mistakes that this offense makes are certainly a little iffy at times, but they do a good job of topping 100-plus yards rushing. So they have respectable balance, and that's kind of been the case back half of the season. Just having enough offense to stay in these games and even have a chance at winning them. Gave up 164 yards to Iowa. I know they had like a fourth-string quarterback, but Caleb Johnson did absolutely nothing. We'll see what kind of play calling BC has in store. I don't think the physicality is going to overwhelm Nebraska at all. I certainly think that how BC is done against the run, though, might be major. But with that big loss up front, I think it's going to be a little bit easier in drop back passing and running straight downhill. So I'm going to stick with Nebraska 26-20, and I think the potential for this game to be significantly lower scoring is certainly there. I'll stick with Nebraska by 6, Nick. Again, a complete toss-up, and you're going to take the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Eagles, this Boston College team, was completely undervalued last year in their bowl game. They ended up winning in the Fenway Bowl. Now they're playing in a different baseball stadium. I think Bill O'Brien's squad gets the job done, and in his first year, the defense, even without their best player, is still a really strong unit. I think they're solid against the run, and I like what they can do on offense, a good passing attack that's getting better with the new quarterback plugged in, as well as a good rushing attack that's got a couple different pieces they can hit you with. This is a good game going down in the Boogie Down Bronx. I think it's fun. The Pinstripe Bowl, always a solid game. I like this matchup. Both these teams have a point to prove here. Both coaches have a point to prove at their respective programs. I just think BC is in a better spot right now. I think they have a solid team, and Nebraska has been a little disappointing as of late. I like what this BC team can do. It's a close game, certainly a toss-up, really close on paper. Went back and forth on this one, but I'm going to settle with the Eagles here. I like what this team can do. A talented roster. I think it's a job done here.
So we have for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.